All right. Hey, dream builders. Welcome to Ask the Expert tonight. I have Carrie Olsen. We're going to be talking about building confidence and empathy through voiceover. I know many of you are excited about tonight's session. But before we dive into this, I am going to just make sure you all are getting comfortable, getting settled, and have everything you need to take good notes tonight because she's going to share all of her good tips with you and she's also a good friend at the Academy, knows Tiffany very well. And as soon as we heard that you all were seeking side hustles or new ways to bring in revenue, hopefully start a business like Carrie has done, we knew that we had to bring her in to share all of the gems that she's gotten throughout this time. And Carrie, I'm just cracking up because they're already asking questions right now
Hey.
before the session has even begun. So I know they're super excited about it. And what we're going to do is get started in a few. I just want to know how many people are new today. How many newbies do we have joining us for their first Ask the Expert session? And while you guys are typing that, I just want to shout out everyone from Maryland and California. There's a few of you in here this afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. If you have an echo, that is because you have two screens open. So make sure you don't have the Literature Academy and the YouTube screen open. You want to close out one of those. All right, we have KJ Tyler. She is a newbie. All right, we have a couple of newbies, Roxanne, Margot, Sherlock. All right. So for those of you who are on time, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Carrie. You know what? I'm just super excited to have her because I think we all could relate to her situation, especially for those of you who are moms. So she was disenchanted by her day job, and she was desperate to learn more about voiceover or how to generate revenue for her life so that she can stay at home and raise her daughter at the time. Well, it was a new daughter at the time. She now has two. And what she did is she started doing voiceover as a side hustle back in 2014. And shockingly, she booked her first job within weeks and made the crazy decision to quit her job to do voiceover full time 4 months after she began. And after years of hard work and a refusal to quit, she is now represented by some of the most sought after voiceover agencies in the country. And if you guys do the math, 2014 and it's now 2020 and she is still doing this. So that means she loves what she does. And she's also teaching other people how to do the same. So she's going to show a little bit of that and share a little bit of it with you tonight. So welcome, Carrie.
Hello, thank you so much. So glad to be here.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you. And
Okay.
I know that Carrie has a presentation, and as usual, once she gets through that presentation at the end of this session, we'll grab a copy for you all so that you can review it on your own time. However, we do not provide it before because we want you to pay attention to what she has to say as she's saying it.
All right, thanks a lot, Tamara. Okay, can everybody see my screen okay? Okay, awesome. All right, well, welcome. I'm really, really excited to be talking to you about one of my favorite things and to be approaching it from a different angle than I usually do and than I have in the past, because there are a bunch of tangential benefits to this voiceover journey that Tamara shared with you, and I'll go through some of that in these slides as well. And since we already have that intro, I'll go quickly through that so that we'll have time to answer questions and get into more voiceover specific things too, if you have those types of questions. So today I'm going to show you how you can use principles from voiceover to become more confident, empathetic, and ultimately successful. I want to share with you a little bit of my story, and like I said, I'll go quickly through it. But I married my husband in 2010. He had a corporate job and he wasn't loving it. He wanted to come home and start his own business. So he came home from work, started his own business, and we had this plan that he was going to start his business while I continued my corporate job, and then eventually would come home from work and we'd start a family. But it took longer than we thought for his business to take off, so that kind of forced me to stay at my job. So I stayed at my corporate job, and this is kind of my corporate profile that I had on our company's sort of internal LinkedIn. Was working with a lot of software. This was the software that I would interact with on a daily basis. It was somewhat creative work. It was a little bit, fulfilling. I liked it okay, but had a long commute to work every day, and it was just your typical full-time corporate job. So it was taking longer than we thought for Derek's business to take off. And so we decided not to wait to start our family. And I had our first daughter, Amelie, who is 6 now. But the problem was we didn't have an exit strategy. So he was still working to get his business going. I was at work and, had a newborn. And so one day driving to work, I turned on a podcast I hadn't listened to before. And just by chance, it wasn't something that I intentionally picked, but it happened to be an interview of a voice actress named Olsen. And I was only half listening to the interview until about halfway through, a light bulb went off. And I heard Allison talking about the work that she does. And she said that she records TV, radio commercials, all kinds of things like that from her home studio, that she supports her family. She has 2 kids. And she kind of gave a description of what her day was like. And she said she gets up and she does yoga, and then she checks her email inbox for her, auditions that are coming in, and records a little bit and goes off and kind of, does some stuff on Facebook, just, working from home. And it was, kind of leisurely. And she, again, was supporting her family. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to learn more about this. So I went to her site, and I'm typically the type of person who does a lot of research. And I basically just went there and bought the consultation. I didn't, research a lot of other people, a lot of other coaches. I was like, I need to know about this. I didn't really know about this. Was like my first introduction to voiceover. So I went and bought a coaching consultation with Allison, and it blew my mind. I had no idea what went behind when you were listening to TV and radio commercials and you hear the people, telling you about the sale at Target or whatever. I had no idea what went into that process. And so this was a really mind-opening experience, learning about the art of voiceover and how it wasn't just people talking like you might think, and quickly just became obsessed with voiceover, and found myself just recording things anywhere and everywhere I could, really analyzing scripts and listening to TV and radio commercials, more trying to analyze them as opposed to, most of the time when a commercial comes on, you fast forward it or you change the channel. And I found myself really just listening and digging in to voiceover. So this is a picture of me recording in my in-laws' closet. We went for a trip, and I would just find anywhere I could to record. Well, eventually, like Tamara said in the intro, I started to book some work. And I'll tell you the story of the first job that I booked. I was auditioning on some online casting sites, and this particular company was based in Denmark. And so I actually got the notification at like 2 a.m. or something. And I'd been auditioning for things, and I was getting some likes, or, kind of getting shortlisted for some jobs, hadn't booked anything yet. And when this job came through, I looked at my phone and just kind of smiled, like, oh my gosh, I actually booked something. And that's where I started to realize that this was something that I could do for a living. Like, this was a money earner and not just something that I really enjoyed doing for reasons that we'll get into in a little bit. So my husband woke up, and when I was leaving for work that day, and I said, I booked my first job. It's $450 for a 2-minute narration. And he just kind of smiled and was like, okay, we're starting to see this pay off. When I started auditioning initially, it was so early, I didn't necessarily think I was going to book anything. I was just kind of feeling out the waters, but this was when it solidified, okay, this is something that can actually be a career. And so this is the job, though, that changed everything. The third job I ever booked was a national radio campaign for REI. And this is where Derek and I, my husband, I looked at each other and we said, all right, we have some decisions to make, because if I'm able to book this much work, working part-time, I'm going to work, coming home, I've got a newborn, what would happen if we took a leap and did this full-time? So booked this job for REI, eventually replaced my day job income with jobs that I'm booking just from online casting sites. And this is, again, part-time. So we take the leap, quit my job. We actually, this is when our book came out. We were writing a personal finance book also. And bought a travel trailer, started traveling, I was actually recording out of the travel trailer. So this is another just huge advantage of voiceover work. It's very mobile. It's not necessarily easy to make mobile because you do have to have quiet, which is hard to do from the highway, hard to do when you're in hotels and places like that. But we did it and had an amazing time. And that was pretty much the thing that supported us for that time on the road was me doing voiceover work from the road. So as you can imagine, in RV parks, they're not the quietest places. So I would find myself getting up early or driving to places within the town to find quiet places to record. So now my latest campaign, I've got booked HBO Max. You can hear me a lot on Grammarly commercials. If you watch YouTube a lot, they're playing those quite a bit. I've got my commercials on IMDb, and if you search iSpot.tv, I've got national TV and commercials that are supporting my business, and that's kind of what my business looks like today. And all of that I do from my home studio, based out in Kansas City. So as I mentioned, I started out as an e-learning designer. So naturally, when people started asking me how I did it, the initial response for me was to create a course. So creating courses came naturally to me because I was an e-learning designer. And so I made a course that's now actually a membership site. And I wanted to offer some sort of performance help when I put out my course. I didn't want it to just be information. I wanted to help people to learn how to actually do voiceover, to kind of have their minds expanded the way that mine was when I started coaching. So I put in some group workouts into the course. And so the idea was that the people who took the course would practice reading scripts to each other, because I didn't consider myself a coach. I was still pretty new at it myself. But what I found was that when everyone got together to learn how to do these scripts, I was the authority in the room. They were, I was a step ahead of where they were, even though I considered myself new. So I kind of became a coach by accident. When everyone in the course is, here like, okay, how do we read these scripts? And I was like, well, go for it. Start practicing. And they were like, actually, we need some direction. So I started coaching through that course. And so I've actually been coaching now for, 5 years because of this course that I created. So the obvious benefits of voiceover are that I'm making a living doing this. It's checking all the boxes, all the criteria that I wanted in a dream job. So I'm able to work from home. I'm with my family. It's a flexible schedule. It supports us, and it's creative work that I really enjoy. So these are all, again, if you're making a checklist of the perfect job that you want, it checks all of those boxes. So that would have been enough. But there were some unexpected benefits of voiceover that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that I think are just so important. They've been so valuable to me, not just with voiceover, but in other applications too. So through voiceover, I felt myself growing just unexpectedly. So I found a couple of things. And one was that I found myself changing through this performance of doing voiceover. So I'm naturally pretty introverted. And I know you guys are in the chat there. So if anyone else would consider themselves an introvert, you can go ahead and type that in the chat. Look, Tamara's saying hi. Yes. So I'm not the person normally that, walk into a room full of people that it's chatting everybody up. I'm not super comfortable in crowds. I do like, having meaningful conversations, and I like being around, people that are energizing to me. But if I'm in a room full of people, I tend to, when I go home, I have to spend an hour just staring at a wall to kind of come down from that for a little bit. It can be draining sometimes to be in, in crowds like that. So what I found with voiceover was that if you look where I am right now, I'm in a black box essentially. And when I first started, I actually recorded out of my closet. Well, this became a really safe place to start taking risks and to start doing things that I, maybe wouldn't do as much in public, for all of the, self-conscious reasons, or just I feel like as adults, we all kind of wear masks, which I know masks is a triggering word right now. So let's, but just in the sense of we're all, kind of we have a filter that we put up when we're out in public, and this became a place where I felt like I could play, and not where I could, but to be successful at my job, I had to play. So when I have, scripts in front of me, as I'm going to record, if I want to stay really formal, or what I might think to be acceptable in public, then it's not going to be a great read. You have to be vulnerable when you get a script. You're saying words that aren't your own. You have to say them as if they're your own, convincingly, and so you're telling yourself this story so that you can do those things. And if you're inhibited, then it's going to come out. We've all heard bad commercials, right? When you're listening to TV and radio, and the voiceover is just not quite there. And maybe that person wasn't coached. Maybe they were concerned about what people were thinking about them. But this became a place where all of a sudden, I do these reads for an outlet mall. And I have never been as excited as I have to be for these jobs when I'm recording these outlet malls. I'm in my booth and I'm just going crazy. And that it felt safe to do that. And I felt like I was accessing another part of myself by being able to do that. So I found myself activating and accessing parts of myself that didn't feel safe accessing and activating in the real world. I gave myself permission to look silly, to sound silly, to even do things that might feel embarrassing in the real world. And that was really empowering. So again, talking about the black box that I record in, just being this safe place to kind of talk about or to experience some self-discovery and to not judge and to not feel judged. So on top of that, as a voiceover coach, I realized that with students that I was teaching, their voices were their voices. Like, a lot of times people think, well, do I have the right voice for voiceover? Well, your voice is important for voiceover, but your ability to read well, and connect with your audience, that's what separates the okay reads from the good reads, or the good reads from the amazing ones. So it's not just, well, your voice is really soothing, your voice is really great. It's how well can you connect to an audience? And a lot of that has to do with accessing that part of yourself, being vulnerable, and not wanting to make sure that you look and feel and sound okay. It's about serving the material. So let's move on. So how do you get started in the voiceover business? I know a lot of you probably have questions about what are the steps to take to actually get started. And so I want to talk to you about those things. If you have those aspirations, if maybe you're listening to this and it's you're having a similar experience that I did when I was listening to the podcast with Olsen, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, light bulb is going off. How do I, how can I start to do this? But I also want to share with you some of the tangential benefits of becoming a voiceover artist that have been huge for me personally. So I believe that I would be doing you a disservice not to share those things, not just because it's been important for me, but because I think that it's actually what is going to, again, separate you as a voiceover talent from being pretty good to being awesome, to having those reads that people really connect with. All right, I see some questions here in the chat. So someone's asking, do you alter your voice for different industries or based on what the client requests? I would say the answer is yes. Most of the work that I do is in my own voice. So if you, I'll put a link to my website later, and I'm sure in the recording there will be something below, and you can hear my demo, and you can hear the different ways that my voice sounds in different for different industries, and then also, based on what the client asks. But again, most of it's in my regular voice. I'll do some teen stuff. I'll do, high energy, low energy, that kind of thing. I'm also, I do accents. I'm taking actually some accent classes right now. So there are different things that the more tools you put in your toolbox, the more bookable you can be with voiceover work. So it really depends. And I like that challenge. So it's fun for me to switch it up. Someone's asking, would you suggest vocal coaching before starting to audition? My blanket answer to that is yes. I think that it's a little bit nuanced because if you um, auditioning can be really brutal. So you're not likely to book a lot if you haven't had coaching. So if you go into it with the mindset of, well, I'm not planning on booking a lot of work right now. I just want to get the experience. I want to know what's out there. I want to get practice, and you're not going to be disheartened by not booking anything and by hearing no constantly, because there's a lot of rejection that comes with it, then you can absolutely start auditioning without coaching. But if you are wanting to get into auditioning because I want to start booking work quick, I want to do it now, the fastest way to do that, in my opinion, is to get some coaching beforehand. Because when you're on those online casting sites, you're competing with people who are coaching, you're competing with people who've been doing this for decades. And so the likelihood of coming in totally green and booking is low. I know that my story, I booked early, but I was coaching. I was coaching regularly. And there are a lot of different factors that go into that. So I think that for most people, it's easier to get that coaching first, so you have that confidence. And there are things like I had a student who had been auditioning for a long time without coaching. He was taking an online class, and he couldn't figure out why he wasn't booking. And then I said, "Well, send me one of your auditions," and he sent it. And when I hit play, the volume was coming in so low I could barely hear it. So there are things like that with, if you get some coaching on the front end, it can save you from making those kinds of mistakes where you might think, man, I'm not booking, I don't understand why, when really just a couple coaching lessons, you'd learn all the things you need to know to submit auditions that are going to give you a better chance to actually start booking. All right. So this kind of is a good segue from the question, do you alter your voice based on different industries? So I wanted to talk to you about the different genres of voiceover, and also what the kind of the benefits of them are, or, talking about empathy, confidence, and identity, where I have seen the bulk of that type of growth, in the different industries. So commercial has been the main one, and that's where most people get started. And I don't have to explain what that is. You've got, TV, radio, and also Pandora and streaming, all of the, kind of the new kinds of commercial that weren't a thing, 10, 20 years ago. E-learning, which is just online training, online courses. So if you get hired at Taco Bell and maybe they have some safety training, or maybe they have some training on how to build the new chicken chalupa, whatever it is. And you sit down in front of a computer kiosk and you're going through and clicking next, and you've got a narrator talking to you, and you're taking quizzes. That's e-learning. Likewise, at a corporate job, you might take something like the principles of business conduct, driver safety, things like that you're required to take. That's all falls under the e-learning category. It has really broadened lately because as technology changes, the opportunities really change for voice actors. Whereas it used to be a lot of just click through, here's an image on the screen, here's some text underneath, here's the narrator talking to you. Then it got a little bit more interactive with, here's some quizzes you can take, maybe some drag and drop things you can do. Well, now you've got full on simulations, and you've got AI, and you've got um, all like virtual learning environments and things like that. And so it becomes a lot more immersive. And so that's a lot of fun to see the technology growing and the opportunities for voiceover talent growing as well with any learning. And especially right now with, everything's moved to online. So there's a lot more being put online. And so there are opportunities there as well. Narration's a really broad category, and I would say that e-learning and explainer videos, the next one, actually fall under that category of narration. But things like documentary narration, corporate narration, that's all that category. Explainer videos tend to be shorter narrations, kind of like e-learning, but they tend to have maybe just one specific point they're trying to make, one product they're trying to advertise, or one service. They're usually, 90-minute or 90 seconds to 3 minutes. A lot of times they have music behind them. They tend to be pretty upbeat. Sometimes they are animated or have, like whiteboard animations. And sometimes they have a story arc where it's like, this is Bob. Bob has problem A and he can't figure it out. Then he discovered product Y, and it solved all of Bob's problems, and now he's great. So sometimes they have this story arc. Video games, animation, trailers, ADR, automated dialogue replacement, and looping. So if you've ever seen in maybe a movie trailer or a television show where you're like, I'm pretty sure like the actor's head was turned. I think that was someone else talking. I don't think that was quite their voice. Sometimes they'll hire a voiceover talent to say lines for the person in the film or the show because either the weather was bad or they want to change what the dialogue was. um, it could be a number of reasons. And so they'll actually plug in a voiceover where the person is speaking. Looping, there are several types of this too, but if there's a movie and there's a crowded scene, maybe someone's walking through an airport and you hear all of the rustle and bustle of the people around the main actors. A lot of times that's voice talent that are just in a circle in a room that are just talking, saying stuff with a microphone in the middle of the room, and they'll put that room noise or that noise in the film. And so that's a lot of fun. That's its own thing. But there's promo. So if you see something advertising a specific show, for example, my HBO Max spots, those are all promos. If it's advertising a station or a show, promo. Radio imaging is basically what gives the radio its branding. You're listening to Mix 93.3. So that person, and then also maybe talking about events that are coming up and things like that. Radio imaging, toys that talk, educational apps, retail, if you're in a store and it's, telling you what a special is or something like that. And then live announce. So if you get hired to do the awards for an award ceremony or something like that. So these are all applications of voiceover. There are more of them, but these are some of the main ones. And as far as where I've learned the most and where you stand to learn the most people start with commercial. And one of the first things that you learn with a commercial script, and I'm going to put one up here in a little bit so we can look at it and maybe everyone can practice it, is who are you talking to? And this is such a huge question. And honestly, this is something that if you were to get a first coaching lesson or to do a voice evaluation or something like that, just asking and answering that question will just do so much for your read. Because before you ask that, it's as if you're just reading the words, you're just reading a script. But if you can answer the question of who is it that I'm talking to? And then there's some other questions that go along with that. Why am I saying this? What just happened right before this? What's going to happen after? So I'm going to go ahead and put a script up here on the screen and we can look at it in terms of those questions I asked. And if you have questions as we're going through it, feel free to ask. So this is a 30-second TV spot. And I'll go ahead and read it out loud. I know you all can see it there on your screen, but how about a little family getaway into the wonderful world of Arkansas? Here, you can hike and explore America's oldest natural park, lay on the shores of our crystal clear lakes, or take amazing photos of our natural springs. Want culture? Follow the steps of Johnny Cash and Hemingway, visit one of our fascinating museums, or immerse yourself in a flourishing nightlife scene. Did we mention that our locals are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet? What are you waiting for? Travel Arkansas. So pretty simple, basic 30-second spot. Now, just reading it like that, it may have sounded like, well, maybe I didn't make any mistakes. Maybe it was a smooth read. But if you ask, who am I talking to? All right, well, who do I know? And the other thing about that question is it's not just who are you talking to as far as a demographic. Well, I'm talking to moms between the age of 33 and 40 who have kids and want to get away. It's a specific answer to that question. I'm talking to my best friend, Rachel, and we are sitting on the couch, and she just asked me, she just told me about how she and her family have been so bored and they're really looking for something that they can do that's going to give them a break from the monotony. And that prompts me to kind of think about it for a minute and then go, well, how about a little family getaway into the wonderful world of Arkansas? Here, you can hike and explore, and then you start to get into a conversation. So with voiceover, it's not about you, and it's not about saying the words pretty necessarily. It's about that connection with your audience. And so asking that question, who am I talking to, and creating this world and this whole scenario. Now, the more that the broader and the more rich the world that you create for these scripts, the better that read is. So I'll tell you, with that job that I booked for REI, so this was when I was first getting started. I didn't necessarily know that it was important to get the audition in quickly. So if you start auditioning, you'll learn some tips on some of the different sites. Sometimes it's really important to get it in quickly, like speed's really important. Um, and I didn't necessarily know that. So I was going to just immerse myself in this world, this REI world. So I spent over 24 hours watching videos of people snowboarding and listening to music that I thought this person might be listening to. They had described who this person was. And I thought, okay, I'm going to really immerse myself in this world. Totally went over the top with that, and then went and did my audition and booked the job. It was my third job ever. But I imagine I probably spent more time than most of the people who were auditioning for that job getting into what this scene actually was. And so what that does for you, what you're practicing there, I mean, it's empathy. It's creating a world where you're saying someone else's words as if they're your own. So what are you feeling when you're saying this? A lot of times with scripts, they'll say things like, when you come and visit us, and anytime that there's that type of language, there's pride in that. You're coming to visit us. And so you take on that emotion of feeling that pride for this company or for this product or whatever it is. And whatever the product is that you're advertising, for the time that you're reading that script and the time that you're in that world that you're creating, you are like, you care about this thing. And if it's something, and sometimes you do have to read for things you don't like or things you don't care about. Um, and those are the times when it becomes most important to put away that judgment, right? So to have a lighthearted example, if you're a Pepsi person and you have to do a Coke commercial, you have to, for a minute, put away that bias that you have for what I say, you're a Pepsi person, for Coke, right? And just become the person that likes Pepsi. I think I switched it there, but you get the point. So really embracing that idea of getting into the mindset of the person that you're speaking to, and that you are. So doing these exercises here in my booth, I've been able to see those come into play in relationships. So in talking to people, instead of being so quick to want to impose my opinion or my way of thinking, it's been a great way for me to learn how to listen and take some time, and not, obviously for relationship's sake, but it's also it's good for business. It's good for voiceover to be a good listener. And you'll hear a lot of actors and voice actors talk about how when they're out and about just in the world, they're always listening to what other people are saying, because it's an interesting study to do. And it's beneficial both as a human and also for your work. The more that you can bring, the more like texture you can bring to your reads, you don't want a one-dimensional read. The ones that really grab the casting agent's attention and the client's attention are the ones that have that texture. And you can really get that by listening to other people and thinking about these questions of, who am I talking to and why? I see a question from Brittany. Would you ask the person who sent you the audition request, who were you talking to? That is a great question. How would you find that information if it's not given? Would you just use your imagination? So sometimes, and especially what I've seen more like with the video games, they tend to give more information. So they might have a picture of the person that you're playing. They might talk about their backstory and how they got to where they are, and their tendencies. For video games and animation, you get some more of that type of information. For commercial, sometimes you literally get nothing. Like sometimes you'll get something where on this script, it says direction, cheerful, upbeat. So that gives you at least something. Although if you're reading the script, you could probably guess that that's the case. It's not going to be a really sad spot. So sometimes they'll give you that information. But when they don't, you absolutely use your imagination. The last thing that you want to do is make it really generic. Like, well, I'm not sure who I'm talking to, so I'm just going to make this really broad. You may have heard in, marketing, if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. And that is the exact same for this. If I come in here and just, how about a little family getaway into the wonderful world? It's like, that doesn't connect with anybody. So you make a decision and you decide who you're talking to. And the more specific, the better. So you absolutely use your imagination with that. A lot of times, when people are listening to the way auditions come in, a lot of times is they might have 100 or so to listen to. And so the casting agent or the client might be going through and hitting play, listen to 5 seconds. Okay, hit play, listen to 5 seconds. So you really have to make that impression when you're first starting, and you have to be deliberate. And to get even more specific as to how real that can be, sometimes you'll get a script that says, something like, when you're on vacation, you don't want to go here. You don't want to go here. You don't want to go here. You want to go here. And that's all. Maybe that's the whole script. And they don't give you any indication as to where here is. So you have to create, you take that time and you put in the work of saying, all right, where would I not want to go? Well, personally, maybe like I wouldn't want to go to somewhere really cold. I wouldn't want to go to Antarctica. All right. Maybe I would want to go, or I wouldn't want to go. And I would think of those actual places. And then when I'm saying it, when I'm reading, I would actually point in my booth here, here, here. And I'd be thinking in my mind of those specific places, because you can hear that. Voiceover, I like to say it's a full body sport. You can all that's coming through the microphone is your voice, but I will be in here moving my hands and arms, and you can hear winks, you can hear shrugs, all of these things, posture. So you want to be as physical as you can while staying on your mic, because you have to have good mic technique, but also definitely visualizing anything that you don't know, you make it up. And then Rochelle's asking, is age a factor? So the way that your voice sounds is a factor. Age would come into play, I would say, if it's a young child that can't read yet. Sometimes they will hire adults to play kids because, for a lot of different reasons, but sometimes if, they can read, don't have to worry about labor laws, it's usually, it can be an easier experience to work with an adult than a small child. So that's when age would come into play. But I mean, my kids audition for things, teenagers, I know people have kids that are, I think, around like 9, 10, 11, who have their college, maybe not completely funded, but a lot of it through doing voiceover work. And it goes the other way also. There are plenty of people who kind of make voiceover something they do in retirement. So you can be any age. It's more about the way your voice sounds. If you can play different age ranges with your voice, and then of course, if you're a really young child, there can be things that are it's easier if the kid can read and knows how to conduct themselves well in a recording session. All right, so I want to talk a little bit specifically about this idea of confidence. So even in thinking of the way that you present yourself as a voice talent, I've seen people who were starting voiceover and maybe they put up a website and it says, I'm an aspiring voice talent, or this is something I'm trying out. And if you think about, if you're hiring anyone to do anything for you, are you going to hire the person who says, I'm trying this out, I might be pretty good at it, I think I could help you some? Or would you say hire the person that says, I am here to solve your problem, I am the voice talent that you need? And so there's this element of right away, almost faking it till you make it. I remember when I booked my first in-session job where I had to go into a studio, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never been to a professional studio. And my coach said, when you go in there, act like you've been doing this for 2 years, like you do this all the time. And so I did. I figure I'm voice acting anyway, I might as well act this part too. So, and not to be dishonest, or it wasn't like an arrogant thing. I've been doing this for a long time, but the point is not to be needy. and to exude confidence. I want them to have trust in me. I want them to trust that I can solve their problem. And if I go in and I'm cowering and nervous the whole time, then they're not going to have that much confidence in me either. So this was kind of a flash course in, all right, in being confident and knowing that I had gone through the training. I was getting coaching and training. They had hired me based on my audition. So I knew that was another thing I could tell myself, like, okay, they listened to my audition. They liked what I did. All I have to do is go in and do that. And then, be coachable in that situation too. But one of the big things that I like to encourage new voice talent to do when you know that you're all in is to consider yourself, say, I am a voice actor. Just making that shift in your own mind from I'm aspiring to I am really changes the way that you kind of carry yourself. And it changes the way that you do auditions. If there's a huge correlation between the confidence that you have when you're doing an audition and how good that audition turns out. If you have the mindset of I'm not too great at this, I'm just trying, I don't know what I'm doing, then that audition isn't going to sound great. Versus if you say I'm the person that you need for this. And also if you're not needy with that audition, if you're too concerned with I have to book this, I have to book this, then the audition comes out sounding needy. Whereas if you can just get in there and play, if you're more concerned about serving the script and that story that you've created than you are about, booking the job or, not looking crazy in your booth, then that's, that is one of the things that's going to take your audition from being pretty good to really good. Because again, you're serving your client, you're serving the story, you're serving the script versus trying to, look how you feel like you need to look, or, I'm just trying to make that next dollar. Now I know that the money is important. So that's a part of it. But your mindset it's kind of like with, if you're marketing yourself in any industry, if you come off needy, then that shows. Versus if you're just confident and if you act like I don't need this next job, this is what I can do. I can serve you and I'm here to serve you. Then that really helps to just take your product to the next level. The other thing that confidence really spoke into was you can't be needy. So I mentioned that first job I went to where my coach said, hey, pretend like you've been doing this for a long time. There are also, that was a directed session, and I do a lot of directed sessions here from my home studio. And that means that I'm hitting record, or sometimes the client's recording where they are, and it's a virtual session. So basically what we're doing here, and I'll read a line, and then the client will say, okay, and then maybe talk to their team, and they'll come back and say, all right, read it like this. And they're actually coaching me through the session. That can be really nerve-wracking if you're self-conscious, because what happens a lot of times is you read the line and then there's silence. And in that silence, you have the opportunity to be telling yourself in your head, oh my gosh, this was awful. They're so quiet because it was an awful read. They hate it. They're going to fire me. This is awful. Or you can tell yourself what's probably happening, which is they're talking about what they're going to order for lunch, or they're, just taking a little break, whatever. And then they come back on and tell you what to do next. And it's your job to just do what they say. So that's part of being coachable. And so when they tell you to do something, whether you think it's the way the script should go or not, you go, yep, I'm on it. And you do what they ask you to do, and trust that you can do that, and that you're doing it well. So just again, trying to solve their problems, but not being you. It's not good to be that needy actor that needs all of the reassurance, because most of the time you don't get it. So it's again a crash course in being able to have that confidence and build that up yourself. So practical application for that in the real world would be it's you become more adept at not worrying about what people are saying, and maybe even if sometimes you imagine people are talking behind your back, and when you've become adept at the skill of just doing what the client's asking you to do, and not worrying what's going on when they go on mute, then you can apply that to the real world as well. All right. So this ties into that, not being worried about what everyone is thinking about you. You can be more free to be fully yourself, to bring yourself to the conversation, to other people, to bring the gifts that you have, and to be able to offer that more genuinely in a way that is more in line with who you were created to be, rather than feel like you need to rather than bringing who you feel like you need to be in order to be liked, seen, loved, appreciated. So this, I was really surprised that when I was, I would get out of some of my coaching sessions and I would think, wow, did I just get out of therapy? Like this was really, deep stuff for the purpose of, doing voiceover. Like it seems like um, it doesn't quite line up, but I found that in order to access those places for my work, it accessed it. I was able to access it in the real world as well. So, obviously, voiceover isn't the only way to achieve those types of benefits of empathy, confidence, identity. Many people, we learn that just through course of going through life. But voiceover has been instrumental in my journey in developing those things, and wanted to share those things with you. So, want to talk a little bit about why it's important. With voiceover and in life, you deal with rejection regularly. So this was kind of an accelerated school to get myself out of the way and to honor the story, and also, to do it in a way that I'm building a business from that. And it was just really neat to see the growth that happened both voiceover wise and in personal life. And I wanted to leave you with a quote from Deborah Wilson, who is an amazing actress and improviser and sketch comedian. She was on Mad TV back in the day when that was a thing. She did a webinar recently with a character acting academy I'm part of, and someone asked her how to be a better actor, and she said, if you want to be a better actor, be a better person. And I felt like that was just so huge because as actors, like, it's all about empathy. It's all about these traits that we're developing as people. When we can bring that to our story, to the acting, that was her main tip, right? So you can take all these classes and things, but it's so I feel like just magical to see those things benefit both your work and your life. And I'll finish up here. And I have a free getting started in voiceover guide. Is this a good time to bring that up, Tamara, or should we? Yeah. Okay. So I'll put this up here on the screen. If you go to carrieolsenvo.com/GS, you can opt in to my email list and also get I think it's a 31-page guide on getting started in voiceover. So it talks about the way that it's changed over the years. It used to be that there was I wouldn't say select, but there was a smaller group of people who were doing a lot of the voiceover work, and a lot of times they were on the coasts. And now with the internet and how easily accessible it is to record something from anywhere in the world and then deliver that audio in super high quality to anyone in the world, it has become a more accessible career. And so I talk about my recommended path for getting started. If you do much research, you can find people who will say things like, well, you can't really get started in voiceover because it's so competitive, or because it requires so much training. And then on the other end, you'll literally find people that say it's super easy. Just go to one of these casting sites and get a $50 cheap microphone, start putting some samples up there, and you can start booking work. And my philosophy is in the middle of that. I think that, while you can book cheap voiceover work, I think that you'll be it's a much more sustainable pathway to put in the work and get the training to try and get the more sustainable work. So again, I mentioned how much my first voiceover job paid. There are people that are out there doing $5 jobs, $5 and $10 jobs. And that's something, voiceover is a skill and it takes time, and there's training and there's software, there's things you have to buy. So I encourage people to honor that investment of their time and money, so that when they're doing voiceover work, they're charging, decent rates that can actually help them to have a sustainable business and not to resent the fact that they're doing a lot of work for not very much pay. So the guide gets into kind of my recommended steps for how to start a voiceover business in today's world.
Thank you so much, Carrie. This was amazing. I'm laughing. You probably saw me a couple of times just chuckling because so many people were commenting that they didn't even know they can make money just off of their voice alone. And then they really loved how you were talking about, you can hear the wink, you can hear the shrug. And as you were doing it, I'm like, oh yeah, you can hear it. You can kind of just hear it in your voice that that's what you're possibly doing because you're so animated and basically in full character when you're presenting. So you talked a little bit just now about basically making a living and what that looks like for people. There were several questions around the payment process or how people are paid out or the industry standard as far as average pay per job, or is it every time it airs? Can you walk us a little bit through that? I know that was a lot.
Sure. Yeah. So I had a slide up there that had different genres, and it would be shocking to you if you saw how the difference and how the different genres pay. So let's see, for example, I didn't put audiobooks up there. Audiobooks are huge. Audiobooks tend to pay per finished hour. So if it's a 5-hour book, you get paid for that however many hours the actual audio is, not how long it took you to do. But so if it takes you 15, 20 hours to record that book, you're getting paid for the 5 finished hours. Another way that they can charge is royalty share. So if it's a book that you think is going to sell quite a bit, then you might agree to a royalty share because then you're making a percentage of however many books that sells. Now that's audiobooks. If you take, I have made more off of one single 30-second commercial than I've made off of doing a 5-hour audiobook that takes 20 hours to record. So the genres have very different pricing structures. And so there is a rate guide that I recommend. It's at the Global Voice Academy. They have a rate guide, and so you can look and see how it's broken down. If you're not familiar with all of the genres, then it can be kind of overwhelming. When I'm doing e-learning, I usually charge by the word. Commercial stuff is going to depend on where it's airing, like how big the market is, how long it's going to air. Those are the primary factors with commercial. And so you can get it renewed. Like sometimes you'll just get a check because, it got picked up for another 13 weeks or whatever it is. But that also, it can depend on whether you're a union actor or a non-union actor. When you're non-union, it's they say it's the Wild West. So I could theoretically charge whatever I wanted for anything. When you're union, there are certain rate standards you have to stay in, and you're more likely to see residuals.
Wow, I'm sorry. I just learned a ton just now. And people are like, wow. So let me ask you this, when it comes to, and I'm assuming it probably comes from experience. Do people typically try a little bit of everything before they stick to one genre, or would you tell people to kind of do their research first and stay on one route?
Sometimes people know exactly what they want to do. And sometimes they have a voice that's like, yeah, you're doing movie trailers, But I would recommend most of the time when you first start getting coaching, be open to anything. Try anything that comes your way. And because you never know, there might be a genre that you didn't realize that you loved or that you were especially gifted at. And, that's why I think if you're going to start auditioning, audition for everything. It's kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. And there were several questions about just is this industry diverse? So if they have a strong accent, have you noticed whether or not clients usually prefer a Western accent? Should they do coaching first when it comes to their accents? And then we've also seen, do they prefer a certain, I forgot what the question was exactly, but just going into a little bit, is there a particular sound that they're looking for all the time?
I would say not all the time, and especially not as much anymore. If you have an accent, depending on how strong it is, if you're wanting to book in the US, use it. Use your accent so you can. I get auditions for things that are asking for people, with certain accents, so you can use that. If you want to be able to book more broadly, then there are coaches you can go to help you to, get different accents, to, everyone has an accent. So I hesitate to say lose your accent, but to, adopt a more general American English accent. And the typical, voiceover baseline would be general American English. And a lot of times it's kind of I don't know if it's Midwest. It's more like when you hear newscasters talking, that's kind of the baseline. But there are requests for all kinds of different sounds. And a lot of times, especially now, you're saying we are open to whatever. We just want the person that can tell this story best. And then there's a lot more request for diversity also right now.
Okay, and I'm loving this question that just came in, and thank you for answering that. The question is there an opportunity for, the sultry radio voice type of voice? Is there an industry for that?
Chocolate.
Chocolate, yes. Look, I hear it already. Yup, chocolate.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
There you go. Okay, let me see. What else do we have here? The name of the union, is it SAG, S-A-G?
Yes, SAG-AFTRA.
Okay. And let me see if I had any other general questions here. Oh, equipment. I know you talked a little bit about it. I know you said you're kind of in the middle, but how much would you say someone should invest in? Like, what is that starting equipment they should have? I know you talked a little bit about the sound of your voice and how that may come in.
Yeah, so I recommend spending at least around $100 to $150 on a microphone. So it's not, nothing crazy. You want a large diaphragm condenser microphone. So if you're Googling voiceover microphones, large diaphragm condenser, it's going to have an XLR connection. So that's, if you can see a little bit online, it's this cable. It's kind of a 3-pronged connection. And then you'll hook it up to an interface. So you'll get an interface that's going to be around $100, $120. I mean, on the lowest end, that's what I would say, like to spend at a minimum. And then, your shock mount, a lot of times your microphone's going to come with your shock mount. You'll need a stand for it, a pop filter. So just that screen that goes in front of your microphone that keeps your plosives from being too disruptive. So a lot of times if someone's not using one or they're talking directly into it or not controlling their plosives much, you can hear the that popping. If you put your hand in front of your mouth and say, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, you can feel that air coming out. And you can just practice saying it without that. So Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, and you can just release less air. So that's the basic equipment. And then, of course, your setup. Your room is actually really, really important. It doesn't have to be a professional booth. Some people will record in their bedrooms, in their closets, but as long as it's sound damp and you want it to be as isolated as possible so you don't have a lot of sound coming in, but you also don't want it to sound like, you don't want it to be muffled. You don't want it to sound like you're in a huge room. You can kind of do a clap test, and if you can hear kind of an echo, then you need to dampen your sound a little bit more.
Awesome. And then we're having a few questions about just your agent. I believe you said that you do have an agent and that you started with one, fairly early, and it seems like it was quick for you. So congratulations.
Thank you.
But can you be successful without one? And then
Absolutely.
I guess the question is, when you have an agent, what's the agreement? I guess they're asking with your contract, how much do they take out of your pay?
Yeah, so you can be successful without an agent. It depends on what you're wanting to achieve. So if you want to get the big national commercials, you want to do movie trailers, you want like the high, kind of like the high end voiceover stuff, then having an agent's going to be on your list of something you want to do. Not right away. I'll answer your question in just a minute but I want to make sure that I say when the way you get an agent usually is from your demo. So you're going to make a demo, then you'll send that to agents, and then they'll bring you onto their roster from your demo. You do not want to make that demo too soon. The demo, they tend to be rather expensive to make. They're an investment, and if you make that demo first thing, then you're going to immediately outgrow it. So you'll get the demo, and then you'll get training, and you'll be better than your demo. And then you're sending out this thing that doesn't represent you anymore. So you want to make sure you have enough training under your belt so that when you make your demo, it's amazing and it represents you, and it's something you're going to be proud of for a couple of years, so that you can use that demo because it's an investment and it's how your agents are going to make their decision. As far as what the agreement is, they're taking a percentage. I've seen different percentages. Pretty standard is 10% of whatever you book through them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know that we are right at the 9 o'clock mark. You guys asked really great questions, and I can tell that you really enjoyed it. I wish you can see all of their comments because you're blowing their mind. And I just want to shout out Rochelle because she was the one that kind of asked about age being a factor, and she's fired up now. She's ready to go. So Rochelle, we are rooting for you. So keep us posted on how everything goes. I want all of you to download Carrie's guide. I just put that in the comment section, but we'll also add that to the academy in the academy, and it'll also be inside of the Facebook group. Carrie is also a dream builder. She's actually a Literature Academy member, so you'll also see her. I'll tag her in the Facebook group just in case there's some additional questions. She'll be able to answer those. Otherwise, I have her website listed. There's information on her actual courses. She also does coaching. So all of that is listed in the academy under this video. But Carrie, do you have any other, like, just good luck? Because they're ready. They're fired up. They're like ready to start auditioning now. Any last words or suggestions or comments?
I'm super excited, and I can't wait to see some of you in, the Facebook group, and maybe in some training opportunities later down the road, and not just for your success in voiceover, but also for what that will do for your life. It's an amazing industry, and I'm really excited to be a part of your journey getting started.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good evening, and we'll catch you guys next Sunday. Be safe.